I am very, very pleased to welcome Molly Carr, who is a wonderful, dynamic violist, chamber musician, recitalist, and educator and artistic director. Molly's performed internationally and been featured in media from the New York Times to the BBC World News. Together with Anna Petrova, her duo partner, they have recently recorded an album, and they've also been involved for a long time with their Novel Voices Refugee Aid Project. And she's directed her energies and used her art to help refugees worldwide, which is really very wonderful. Molly and Anna made their Carnegie Hall debut to sold out audience in 2019-2020 season. Must have been just before everything shut down. That was very cool that you got to do that. And the recently released album is called Novel Voices. And we're so honored to welcome you here today, Molly, and to tell us about how you came across Dounis. And it's also wonderful to be able to look at the Dounis in viola, in alto clef, instead of constantly transposing. If you've run across it before, it's a real pleasure to have you here today. Anyway, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure and a terror to be here because I never thought that when I release this to the world that people would be asking me to actually demonstrate my warm-up routine. So yeah, so welcome to my practice room where things are allowed to be out of tune and they're allowed to be slowly progressing one step at a time. And so, yeah, so a little before we dive in, to actually, my plan is to go all the way through the Daily Dozen and talk about the different things I think about, the different challenges of them. Some of them are actually really hard for the brain and the body. And so, yeah, just my goal today is to give a couple tips and tricks and things that I think about and steps on trying to integrate them into your body to be able to do them. But before I do that, just a little bit of background about why this has become a part of my life. When I was still a student at the Juilliard School, my teacher, Heidi Castleman, would have presenters come in every Wednesday night to our studio class, and sometimes it would be a business person, sometimes it would be a violist, sometimes it would be a violinist, sometimes it would be all different categories. And one of the guests that she brought in was a violinist named Danny Phillips, the violinist of the Orion Quartet. And he was doing a presentation on Dounis and how there are so many things that we, in the way that we approach our instruments, that Dounis actually was thinking of it sort of through the back door in integrating things into your brain and your body. And I was kind of fascinated by this. Right at the same time, my other teacher, I always had Heidi Kesselman and Steve Tenenbaum together as my teachers. He was also starting to be totally fascinated with Dounis and was in my lessons giving different examples of how he was changing his own playing and to like amazing effect. And so then again, I was like, wow, this is something. What I need to go and check this out. And then I also had a friend at the same time. This really was all within like the same couple like weeks or months. His name was Yuval Hert. He's a violinist, and he just his development as a violinist just went like this over like a year and a half. And he's a friend that I'm able to call up and ask very honest questions, or ask for very honest answers in my questions, and he'll always give it straight to me. And he said, I said, how is this happening? How are you? What, you sound incredible. What's happening? He said, I started doing Dounis Daily Dozen every day. I discovered this. It's amazing. And so he sent it to me. He sent me the violin Daily Dozen. And I sat down and tried the first exercise and like hollered because I was like, what? I'm like looking at my finger trying to get it to do something that it didn't want to do. And so that was it. It had me. I had to learn it. So now, I guess that was over 10 years ago now. Now I still am doing it. I don't do it every single day, because when I do it, it takes time. So I would say it takes around like 45 minutes to an hour, if I'm really solidly practicing it. And I don't always have that amount of time that I can give to, like, it's basically going to the gym. It's basically getting your body and brain into a state that you're ready to take anything on. So what I do with it is usually around 2 to 3 times a week. I will do that full routine, and the rest of the time, I'll do a warm-up scale and then pick a few exercises, and I'll point them out which ones seem to really get the blood flowing. I know that if I don't do the whole thing, my body won't be at its absolute best, and sometimes that's okay in my practicing, that I know I need to focus on something else, and I recognize that it's not exactly what my body, doesn't feel the best, but it's okay. So yeah, jumping into Dounis now. When a lot of times when I tell people that I am getting into Dounis and that I practice Dounis, their first response is, oh my gosh, you should be really careful. I've heard of a lot of people getting hurt using Dounis. It asks you to do these crazy things that like stretch you in positions that you shouldn't be stretched in, and it's too much work for the body. And so knowing this, having a lot of people telling me this, my approach to getting into this was to read the manual, was to make sure that everything, all the directions, I mean, my tendency in everything else in my life is like, do it and then figure out what you did wrong after. You're building the TV, like, oops, what's this for? Not with Dounis. I made sure to read through everything he has to say and to take care that I'm really doing what it is that it's meant for. So, because I don't think that with him training so many great and world famous performers, there's no way that he would be hurting them. So I would say the most important quote and the most important statement that you can take out of all of the directions that he actually gives at the very end, to conclude a last word of advice. And I'm just going to read it here to like center us for the rest of this time together. He says, play everything always in an absolutely free and easy manner without any constraint or stiffness, whether mental or physical. Have continuously in mind that elasticity, suppleness is the basis of artistic playing. Think of the acrobat who performs the most difficult and most intricate tour de force always smiling. The secret of technical perfection being not to give the impression that you have difficulty in conquering a difficulty. So this is kind of my seed, my core approach to everything that I do in integrating, or did and do in integrating Dounis into my system, was that if there was something that was too challenging for me, then that meant that I needed to step back, break it down into pieces that were easier to digest. If that was still too much, let's break it down even further, and so that my body and my mind could be at complete ease as I asked it to do new things. So now let's jump in with that in mind. The very first exercise is the setup of all four fingers across all four strings. And I'll tell you already a couple things that help. This is a little easier. A couple things that help with that last statement to stay totally relaxed and released. If I keep my thumb locked and pushing on the first finger, there's no way I can possibly make it out to the fourth finger without a lot of stress. So the first thing that I do, and I realized that was like one of the first things that Dounis taught me, was that I need to release the thumb and be okay with putting it in a position I really wasn't used to. So I thought about, actually, as I was preparing for this presentation, I thought about showing a picture of myself at 12 years old and what my wrist looked like what my natural state. I always played like this because I was locked on my first finger, and that was my center of pitch, that was my center of everything, and so I would go out like this. So this, Dounis, your hand will fall off if you try to do this first exercise for very long like this. So my immediate response then is bring the thumb up and put it in a place in the hand that is at the center of balance. My approach to this also was that you're not using the bow, so don't worry about it being perfectly in tune. One, spread your hand out in a way that's super comfortable. And then also don't push the strings all the way down. And just let your fingers just rest happily and floating above the strings. Okay? And so the thumb up, the fingers relaxed and released on the strings. Okay? And then we're gonna tap in rhythm. In rhythm is super important, because if your brain is sending signals that are kind of random, that's not control. So we're gonna go, even if it's like 10 years between each tap, which it won't be, that's better than doing just random taps when you can. So we're gonna start the first exercise here. 1A is just tapping the first finger. So everything is balanced and relaxed and released. And I even sometimes I like swat this guy to make sure he's really hanging and nothing is being held. Okay, and then we're gonna go 1, 2, 3,
Hello?
4. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when you're standing to the side, the scroll is out of the picture. You'd move back about a foot.
Sure, I can do that.
No, the other way, to your right. Yeah.
Is it good?
Yeah. You're tending to push the scroll out of the picture, but I can see your hands. Thank you.
Great, no problem. Yeah, okay, so we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4. If this is too fast for you, do only in a rhythm that is fine for you. Okay, so once we make it through, you're supposed to do it 4 times, I believe. You're supposed to repeat it twice. Yeah, so it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, next one, then 2. We're just gonna go through the fingers. And all the while, if there's any moment where you start to feel that things are starting to tense up, nope, stop, let it go, reset, and then tap when you're ready. Okay, third finger, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, fourth finger. All right, we're going through. Then he starts to do patterns. It's a little bit like, did you ever play this game where someone points to a finger and you have to like get the right finger that they're pointing to? It's just a little bit of that game for the brain. Great. Okay, and then we go through all of the different patterns that he has, and I have been doing it long enough now that it's so second nature that I like to throw which is actually amazing, because I remind you that the first time I ever did this, whoops, someone's sharing a screen. Oh, great. Yeah, the first time I did this, I was struggling so much to find my fingers. And so now it's like, oh yeah, okay, thirds, no problem. Okay, middle, outer, middle, okay. So now, in order to keep challenging my brain, to keep finding that stretch, that feeling of like, ugh, to try and find the fingers, I'll now switch things up, to maybe do a sixth and then thirds, and a sixth and then thirds, or variate. So I'm really in control of whatever it is that I want to be doing with my fingers. That every day I'm still going for that tiny bit of like push the envelope challenge in the brain. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, so thumb, don't press the strings down, aim for comfort, always stay in rhythm. And then once you get used to it, then keep expanding your brain power. Next one is, any questions at this point at all?
Molly, I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi. When you do this exercise, like, do all the fingers have to be absolutely clean and not like touch neighboring strings when you like tap? There's some positions that are really hard and more scrunch, and then it might like hit another adjacent string.
I'm not, I mean, maybe there is, when I'm set up in my happy place, then I'm not hitting other strings. So I'm not sure actually how it would be set up to hit other strings. So I think not. Yeah, I think, yeah. So
Thanks.
yeah, sure.
Instead of a specific number of repetitions, does it make sense to practice each of the exercises for a given duration, say 15 or 20 seconds each?
It's possible. I mean, maybe there have been studies that, that prove that it's better to do, a certain number of times for the brain, that it'll integrate better that way. I've just went with what was on the page. But if you want to look into that, let me know. I would love to know.
Well, I practice these things like, 15 seconds for each measure, which is pretty tough as you get far into it. But when I'm done, I feel like I could crush a Volkswagen.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try it. Thank you. Tomorrow I'm going to do it and see what the difference is in my hand. Awesome. Great. So the next exercise then is the exact same thing, except now you're set up backwards. So now you're going, again, putting the thumb in a position that maybe you wouldn't use actually when you're playing. I don't normally play with like a Perlman thumb up here, but when I'm doing this exercise, it allows me to be the most released possible. And my singular focus in the exercise is to be able to have complete release and complete control of whatever finger I want to be moving. So that's that's making it simpler. So yeah, so I'll be tapping, we made it through. Maybe I'll try it 15 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, that's more work. Cool, I'm gonna try it. I'll try it from now on, see if it changes my hand. Great, so that's 1A and 1B. Have fun with all of the patterns. And then once you've made it through all of them, then make up some of your own. And then we're on to the actual using the bow. This guy, in all honesty, I often skip this one. I probably shouldn't. But once I've done these tapping exercises, I feel like pretty set in a good position already. But so I'm going to be a good citizen and actually do this one. So my goal, my singular goal in this is, again, comfort and keeping that same type of positioning of the hand across the strings. So even though your positioning now is not going to be across the strings, it's going to be on a single string. So it'll be actually easier for you. So now we're gonna go. Yeah, and you go all the way up, all the way down, trying to keep that, again, that position. I actually recently have been calling it the Hillary Hahn position. I don't know if you've watched any of her 100 Days of Practice, that she is a genius. She's a machine at keeping her hand exactly in position. No matter what finger she's playing, it always stays in this position. It's incredible. So, okay. Then the next exercise is the second exercise. And this one is genius. So a couple of things happening here. One, again, it's highlighting finger independence, because your fingers don't, when you're playing on one pitch, your finger doesn't really particularly want to be moving. It's like doing a double trill type feeling. And it's also teaching you, because of the slides in between. So he asks you to play everything with the most release possible as you drop your fingers, that you really feel like, it's what I call happy hands. You're like dropping from the base knuckles. But then when it's time to shift between positions, so shifting between the measures, then you're gonna push as hard as you possibly can. And through doing that, the moment you, so it's kind of like, it's like giving a baby, giving a little kid, oh, this is it. Okay, I just came up with this. Okay, so when I was like 8 years old, my parents decided that they were tired of telling me, no, I can't have Halloween candy. And so they decided instead to let me have, for 24 hours, as much Halloween candy as I could possibly stomach, to show that the reason they were saying no was because I would get sick. It actually didn't work. But the theory of it is that you actually go so far in the opposite direction that your body and your brain recognize, no, I don't like that. And so in the moment of releasing it, that your brain grabs onto of that feeling of like, that feels good. I like that. And so it's like a back door to the brain of whenever all your teachers are telling you, release, release, release. Well, yeah, then it teaches you, okay, you can actually release. So so here, this exercise, we do push like heck. Push like heck. Like heck. So that moment of letting go, it's like it's like a breath of fresh air suddenly for the body and the brain. A couple other things that I think that it also does is when you're pushing really hard into the left hand, the right hand wants to do that too. When I first started practicing, I noticed that I was going right? But if you don't allow yourself to do that, that's another pathway in the brain that you're building, that you're able to separate and control. What am I doing with this? It's like becoming a pianist, that one hand is doing a 5 and the other is doing a 3 or something like this. That you keep this totally solid and it's not affected by what the left hand is doing. Yeah, and it's harder than it looks. So if it is actually hard enough that it hinders you from actually getting to the core purpose of this exercise, which is, again, teaching you that back door of the brain of releasing, then don't worry about if the bow is crushing in. Let it crush in. And then once it becomes second nature to actually do the exercise of push and release, then you can let the bow do start trying to work on the bow not crushing in with the left hand. Does that make sense? I'm not sure that was totally clear. Okay, great.
Can I ask you what do you mean exactly when you say push hard? Do you mean like fast or like gripping harder to the neck, or what exactly you mean?
Yeah, so pushing deeply into the string. So you're using muscle. It's like, yeah, so when I get nervous, my tendency is to lock and grab. And so this has helped me a lot actually on stage, that I recognize now, oh, that feels like the Dounis thing that I don't like to do, but I've trained myself that I can actually release in that moment because I've done Dounis Daily Dozen. That like, oh, I recognize that. That's okay. I know how to get out of that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much.
Cool. And also another added benefit of this exercise, by the way, this is one of the exercises that if I don't have enough time to do the whole thing, I'll use this one. This one is super, super great. So another added benefit of doing this is that it actually, in the pushing, we train so many muscles in our hands, doing so many things, scales, I don't know. Yeah, playing viola takes a lot of muscle power. Okay, but one muscle that we rarely actually work on in strengthening is the muscles actually in between the fingers. And I had a conversation about this with a violinist, Jesus Reina, who's an incredibly virtuosic violinist, a Spanish violinist. And he was telling me about this, that his teacher, Fuchs, always talked about this, that it was like an epidemic for string players, that we don't address the weak muscles between the fingers. So this exercise also does that, because it's asking you to do, as you do the shift, that it's actually using those muscles as you push up. So it's strengthening, it's like separating the hands, it's separating the fingers, it's all these crazy things. So yeah, so I like this one. Any questions? Any other questions at this point?
I have a question about this. So, when you were talking about like breaking things down, was there a point where you broke this down, and would you like do less notes in a bow, or what would you,
Yeah.
how would you go about like getting past square one with this?
Yeah. So when it was giving me trouble, I would only do it with the left hand. I would forget about the right hand. So that it's a singular focus of, okay, can I just get the fingers to move when they're supposed to? I also would not worry at all about intonation. So that again, when you asked me to come and give a presentation on Dounis, I was like, oh no, I better get this in tune, because I'm allowing myself in my practice space to be okay with some things not being fully there if my one goal is being achieved. And my one goal is the independence of fingers and the pushing and releasing. So that would be something. So I'm telling a room full of violists that it's okay, let's play out of tune. That can be one step. Sorry, this is definitely a viola joke in there. Yeah, and then also absolutely of not putting all of the notes under one slur. I still do that. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I do as well. Yeah. I also do. So it's the directions say very slow. Sometimes I actually take it really out of tempo to make sure that. So I'll do something like. So I'll break the slur. Say. So that's my singular focus, that pushing, okay, and the releasing. And if my brain needs more time to digest that, that's okay. Then I did something that day. Doesn't have to be that all the pieces are together in one try. Yeah? Cool. All right. Yeah, and then the other variant down at the bottom of the page, it's once you get all of that information into your body and brain, then you start messing around with, okay, so do I have control of, great. Right, or all the different variations you can mess around with each day. Cool. And again, a reminder on this one, when you're not pushing, it should be like the most dropped, released baby happy hands as possible, is the goal. All right, so if there are no questions, then the next one is the third exercise. This is like my number one. If I need to play a concerto and my flight was delayed and I need to like get on stage within 37 seconds, this is the first thing that I do, because it requires it's that same type of pushing and releasing, and it also in pushing warms up the hand. It actually, that there's more blood flowing in my hand than there was once I get to the end of this than there was at the start. So all it is again strengthening these muscles in here, pushing like heck and releasing like heck. So release, push, and I'm pushing really hard. Release, push, and it feels so good also, again, because these muscles they just don't get used that often. So when you're actually using them and they're waking up, it's almost like doing like a stretch for them, that they're getting accessed when they normally don't. So, and this one as well, if you are when I started, I was doing this. Right? And that's okay if you realize you're doing that. So then once this becomes second nature to do all of this, this one is actually not so hard to get into your left hand. Then you can start to separate and keep this. Push like heck without changing the right hand. Push like heck. Release. Push. Yeah, and it's already, I feel like, okay, I'm gonna be able to start playing soon. It's just, you have a more athletic feel in the hand. Let's see, what else? Yeah, yeah, just, again, the main focus is it's like the opposite of good to show you, it's the bad to show you the good. All right, oh brother. So here we go. The fourth exercise was almost what made me cancel coming here, because no one wants to play thirds in front of a group of colleagues. So this one is really to train your balance in your hand, and to train you to be able to play thirds. And what Dounis addresses in this exercise is that a lot of times, most of the time actually, and I was definitely doing this before starting to work on this Dounis Daily Dozen, was that when you're playing thirds, you, because the viola is big, you end up losing the position when you say you play a 1-3, then when you put your 2-4 down, we a lot of times just let these guys go. That's what he's saying, don't do that. Life becomes much easier with thirds if you always keep the grounding of your 1-3 no matter where you are. So so this trains you then, so I'm I don't know if you can tell from the Zoom, but every new position I go to, I'm keeping my 1-3 down so that all 4 fingers are down. So that what it ends up feeling like is that first exercise we did, where all you're doing is tapping down your 2-4 and then your 1-3 is already there. So it also helps really with intonation, that then you're not out in the middle of a black ocean of fingerboard here. You went from position to position, and then everything stays as a unit. Again, it's like the Hilary Hahn hand that you stay. Yeah, I call it also like the subway cars. You go from like 79 to 86 as a unit, rather than like wiggling around and trying to find where you're going. This one was too hard for me to just play right off the page. So the way that I broke it down was to actually do just to actually flip. So instead I did so that I really am going from 1-3, 1-2, 1-3, then 2, 1-3, 1-3. I can't talk. 1-3, 1-3, 1-3, then 2-4. Right? So then it really makes it. You're still learning the same thing, but eventually, because when you have to do actually what's on the page, you are. Right? So you're just hiding that, but then so then you know where it is, really you know where it is, because you actually spent time playing it. And this one also, I let myself be totally fine with being horrendously out of tune for quite a while, because my singular focus was, in order to keep that balance and keep that 1-3 feeling like wherever I'm going, it's still comfortable, that I'm not doing any extra motion, that I'm really keeping it that nothing changed in the hand. Obviously you're going from like minor thirds to major thirds. That's the challenge. And so if you generally I think if you still as you're navigating the major thirds and minor thirds, if you're still staying balanced between the 2 fingers, it's much easier than to just do like open outward from the 2, rather than like mess around and try and like slide into home base. Does that all make sense? Any questions at this point? Cool. The second half of this thirds exercise also is great, because then it requires you to do the opposite of actually doing. You still have to keep your 1-3 down. Let's see. Where am I going? Okay. Here we go. Okay. So you're gonna go. My 1-3 is already down. Again. And then I'm shifting all fingers up, 2-4, 2-4. Then back down, 2-4, 2-4, with my 1-3 aware of what pitches it's on. Down, 2-4, 2-4. So again, you're taking out any of the extraneous guesswork of individual fingers. You're making your hand as a unit, keeping you balanced on where you need to go. This is like, talk about Paganini La Campanella. stuff, this really helped a lot. So yeah, I think the more time you spend on this one, and stay not frustrated, just know that it's a long process. I've been doing it for 10 years and it's finally starting to be comfortable. Probably won't take you that long. But yeah, so all right, moving on to the next one. Yeah, so when I released this transcription to the world, the biggest question that I got from was, do you actually do the fingered octaves? When I'm being very adventurous, okay, yes, I will do it. But generally, I do what he offers as the less advanced players should practice just with normal octave placement of 1/4, 1/4. A tip on that, in order to, again, to keep this frame that's like the subway car going from station to station, I sometimes practice it actually as 6 rather than octaves. So that's what I'm thinking, and that's what I'm balancing on, but then I just lightly drop my 4th finger. But if I'm thinking this pitch, then voila, the hand stays in the position rather than like, searching and longing for an octave. Yeah, that's my little trick. Yeah, I also make sure in this one, and also in the thirds exercise, that every shift I do, I'm very careful to do it with the arm. That even if it's a tiny shift like this, I'm never gonna be doing it with the small muscles. I'll always keep it as something that feels like my elbow is opening and closing. This really helps again with that balance and like the Hilary Hahn hand. And finally, any of the shifts that I do here, I also make sure that I am slurping like heck with the bow, so that there's no moment where I stop and then have to search with the left hand and no, because the more the hands help each other, the easier your viola life gets. It's when the right hand stops that the left hand goes like, it has to jump over a moat to get to the next thing, rather than just, they help the hands. They like to work together. I mean, we know this when we try to do, stuff like this. We can't, they want to go like that and like that. It's much easier. So same with shifting. Okay, all right, charging forward. The 5th exercise I think is fabulous because for 2 things. One, it already is, is making your hand remember that position of the first exercise, that you're just keeping everything again in this prepared for anything coming arpeggiated position. But it also forces you to really visualize your fingerboard with clarity. My philosophy, I'll try and do this in like 37 seconds or less. My philosophy of intonation is that all the pitches that line up in perfect intervals with the open strings are kind of your non-negotiable pitches as you're tuning things. So we have a lot of non-negotiable pitches in here. We have this one, which is a D, and then he's negotiable. This guy isn't. This guy isn't. This guy isn't. This one isn't. This one isn't. This one isn't. Etc. All the way up. So you are starting to build a frame of the fingerboard that is like, it's almost like frets, guitar frets, that there's, you know exactly where that is. So now, with sharps then, sharps are always meant to be pushing up to usually a non-negotiable note, and the flats are always settling down. They're like, yeah, someone with a big bum sitting on a seat. So we're doing, if I'm doing a sharp, so that's what he's at, sorry, so to backtrack, that's what he's saying. The greatest care should be exercised in bringing out the subtle alterations in tone color in the enharmonic changes. So he's going to give you a bunch of arpeggios that are same arpeggios, but enharmonically different. So you then, in your centering, the beginning of your practice, you're centering your visualization of where stuff lands on the fingerboard. This is genius. So you're doing, rather than, you're doing, right? He's pushing up to the G, which is the non-negotiable. So pushing up to the G, pushing up, pushing up, same thing, sharp, sharp, sharps. Then he gives you a couple that are wacky here. So the third line down, then you're doing same. So all the way through these arpeggios, you start like really visualizing and planning where those sharps and flats, their purpose in the arpeggio. Yeah, helps. And then when you go to repertoire and you see like a double sharp, you're like, why the heck? Why couldn't they have just written it this way? Well, because they're hearing it a very certain way, that a double sharp mean it's like it's twice pushed up to the pitch above it, rather than the enharmonic equivalent. So yeah, it really helps in the brain grid intonation. Did that make sense? Sometimes when I explain intonation, people like get very...
Yeah, that did make sense, and it's a wonderful way to think of it. Actually, really amazing. So would you like check with your open strings as you were going in general? And it says, it always says like really slow. So like, how slow would you have started this out, say at the beginning, and how many notes in a bow kind of thing?
Yeah, I still, when I'm being the best citizen, I will actually try to do all of the notes in the bow, but my singular focus in this is, again, a relaxed hand accomplishing what my brain is visualizing and hearing. So if that means, again, that I take 10 years between pitches, I'm okay with that, as long as the next pitch that comes out is exactly what I envisioned it to be. So if that means also that I do like one bow per note, also for me it's totally fine, because then you're actually grabbing real information that then your body will get used to it, your brain will get used to it, and then you can build on that and eventually do everything in one bow. So I would say, yeah, very slow is like really slow if you need it to be really slow. Like my first bit was something like... Yeah, and I would check. And you notice that I'm also not in rhythm. If I have my singular focus of intonation and release, I'm okay with, for the start of it, if that's what I'm learning, that's what I'm putting in my brain, I'm okay with it not being in rhythm. Eventually, as it gets to be a habit, I can put it in rhythm. So that's generally how.
Yeah, I notice how much you're connecting between intervals in your left hand. Like it's really it stands out to me because of other things I've been taught, but that's yeah, it's really connected. Like you're
Mhm.
feeling the interval shape, it seems like, in your hand.
Yeah, yeah, yes. I think, yeah, I think my tendency is that I am too smushy between things, and so part of Dounis has been to help me with that position of like keeping things really stable. So, but in first position, there's no way for me to reach things comfortably unless I'm, free to move and shift around. So, yeah, somewhere. Thanks for pointing that out. I'm going to keep an eye on that.
I
I
mean,
think it's
I
good.
think it's a
I think
good
it's
thing
good, but I'm going to check on it.
because you're like kind of getting a physical sensation of the distance, which,
Yeah.
you're measuring it in your hand, which is, I mean, I aspire to doing that, and it seems like a good thing, but let me know if you
Okay. Yeah. I'll work on it tomorrow. Uh,
curious.
great. Um, should we push on? The sixth exercise is another one that if I don't have time, this will be one of my top ones. This also is that weird inner finger muscle situation that seems, it just, I don't know why, it just, after I do this exercise, honestly, it's still a little bit of a mystery to me why it feels so good after you do it. I'll keep thinking about it, maybe get back to you. But it's just doing all the different fingers on the same pitch. So and the exercise only has you go up to there on each string, and then you drop down and do it again. I like to actually go all the way up. Until I can't possibly go anymore, because again, there's something in the like condensing the hand and then coming out and condensing that is, I don't know, I just feel so much better after. And I also, coming down, I'll do crazy stuff like go all the way down, like all the way to the place where the fingers don't want to go. You're never going to play a fourth finger, E flat with your fourth finger, but it's still there's something in it that's like waking up the hand and exercising it. So I love this one. Yeah. Any questions on that one? No. Okay. So the next one, I actually, before I get to 6B, I actually do my vibrato exercises. It's become like, at this point, I even forgot that they weren't part of Dounis. That I do, they have very technical terms. I do the plops, I do the schmoopies, and I do rhythmic vibrato. So, and then once I've done those three things, then I'll come back to Dounis and do this next one for it to be like most beneficial use of the exercise. So I'll just give like a super brief introduction of what the plops and the schmoopies are. I studied with Pinka Zuckerman, and his big philosophy of vibrato is that it's not vibrato. That every single time you put a finger down, it's an opportunity for release. And then when you've released, that ends up being what we hear as vibrato. And so that was a very difficult concept for me to integrate, because I taught myself to vibrate by just tightening up, and it sounded, I thought like, ooh, I like this sound, so I'm gonna go with it. So I literally taught myself how to vibrate by like flexing my arm. So it's taken a long time to get out of that. And one of the ways that I was able to get out of it was from doing the plops. So the plops are something where I inhale, and as I exhale, I let things go to the point that I just drop my hand. That the fingerboard happens to be in the way, but I see some of you doing a drop and then putting the hand down. So that's what we don't want. We want it so released that it's like, oof. And I'm holding here now so that I can counter the weight of the arm. Like it's all the weight of the arm from here, a release. I'm letting it go. And so it doesn't look anything like vibrato, but it's like a backdoor to the brain of teaching yourself that it's okay that every single time I put my finger down, it can be a great feeling of release. So I do all 4 fingers, okay? And eventually when that feels okay, I'm still breathing in and breathing out is the release. Then I won't drop all the way, but I still feel like that amount of weight and release from the shoulder, letting go. And then I'll start to transfer between the fingers. So there's a single plop and then there's a transfer. Single plop, transfer, single plop, transfer. Then I can even do a couple transfers. So plop, transfer, transfer, transfer. Plop, transfer, transfer, transfer. Yeah, so it's just again like attaching your brain to the muscle, what Heidi Castleman calls the control tower here of vibrato, that you're able to make it soft on command. Even when you're freaking out playing a concerto in Carnegie Hall, you can be hearing that it's tightening up and you practice it so much that you have access to, no, I can let it go. It's okay. So that's the plops. And the schmopies.
On the string? Yeah.
Sorry?
The plop, the one where you don't drop off the string?
Yeah. So the plop, so it's almost like I'm hanging, the full weight of my arm is hanging from the fingerboard. I just don't drop it all the way down. And every time I drop, it's like an outward breath and it's a letting go. Yeah. And then the schmopies are to teach your hand to do circular vibrato, so that you're not just doing up and down like this. You're actually rotating all of those nice muscles in there. They're all getting a workout and they're all getting a stretch. And you're moving the flesh under the fingernail around, so that you get used to the feeling of you get a vibrato that is able to be like has that extra fizz, that extra sparkle. Yeah, from the flexibility and the fleshiness of the tip of the finger. So that's my schmopies. And I do all 4 fingers. I kind of just like wiggle it around so that there's nothing that's stiff in the hand. And then I go into rhythmic vibrato. And I do arm. So I'll go up into 3rd position and I'll go... okay, backtrack a little bit. I'm sure a lot of you have done pizza taco before, where you do a... Right? I'm sure we all did this at like 8 years old. But now I've extended that because I realized that a lot of people teach to do vibrato on one finger, all the different speeds, but they don't teach transferring between the fingers with the same speed. So then we end up vibrating with like a start, a start, a start, a start, rather than something that goes like this and then you drop your fingers along that rotation. So yeah, so then I'll do all the exercises. And they they get harder as they go faster, because sometimes when you are supposed to be down is when you're supposed to be dropping your second finger. So that's where it really trains you to separate, again, a backdoor in the brain, to separate vibrating with dropping your fingers, that you actually have control to separate those two actions in your body. So now, okay, and I also do that with the wrist. So and eventually on this, if it gets to be easy enough, then I start messing with my brain more and doing like dropping randomly. So the rhythm has to stay, of the rotations has to stay the same, but that you're really like going cross-eyed trying to separate the directives. So now, once I've done that, then I'm coming back to Dounis. And now with this exercise, I use it with, sometimes I use it with the plops, and sometimes I use it with rhythmic vibrato. So what I'll do is I'll decide how many notes get plops. And usually I do a plop every note, and then I do a plop every 2 notes, and I do a plop every 3 notes, and then etc. So I go, so pick a string, so plop, so it's, you can see, it doesn't sound good, but it's doing such great work in my body. Once I've gone through this exercise in my morning routine, I bring it on. Give me Brahms, baby. I'm ready. I can give me the that my fingers are prepared. I can keep it going. I get whatever position I'm in. I can navigate separating the commands. So, yeah, and then you go all the way through choosing your number of notes that you're going to include in the ploppage. And then each day I'll do a different string. Any questions on this at this point? No? Okay, cool. So now, I know we're almost out of time here. So the next couple exercises, I maybe won't play so much, but they are awesome for just asking you to do crazy things that you don't normally get to do. So for example, the first exercise, he asks you to do totally fine and normal, right? Okay, now he says, can you do spiccato at the frog? Okay, sure. And fast and quiet. It's like he asks you to do these things that you really have to think about, like, oh, can I even do that? How does this work? So every day he gives you a new, different little pairing of challenges that is like, it's fun and it's great, and it pushes muscles in your arm that you didn't realize that you needed to have pushed, and just wakes things up. One of my favorite, so the 7th exercise is the nut of the bow. It gives you all these different variations. Every day you have something else that he wakes up in you. And then the 8th exercise is the middle of the bow, 9th point of the bow, and then 10th is the whole bow. And I'll just show you one of the crazy ones that I love doing this, that there's no way for me to do it. I don't think anyone can do it. But the act of trying every day, or I guess it would be every 7th day, act of trying once a week, is enough to really wake your arm up and really get you to improve. So it's the 10th exercise, number 5, where he has you go. can do this, but it's so great because it's having your muscles like jump and balance and push and like articulate and so many things all at once. So it's great. I try really hard to keep it in time, but I have yet to be able to keep it in time. So, all right. And then the 11th exercise is awesome for, again, teaching you the reverse of good sound production. So when we want to make a beautiful sound, most of the time or a big and beautiful sound, we push. We go in, right? We go after the sound. What he's telling you is, no, you don't actually have to do that. I'll show you how you can actually release in the sound. So what he does is he has you do that type of pushing rhythmically into the string. But again, the part that we want to grab is once you're coming out of the string. This, boom, let it go. Boom, let it go. Boom, let it go. So then as you're playing something, say on stage, you start to realize that you're pushing. Okay, oh no, I recognize this. I can let it go. I remember being able to get out of that position. So what we're doing is... It's not possible. I haven't met someone that can do it. Yeah, and it's just the act of trying every day, and it rebalances you and into letting go, let go, let go, crush, let go, crush, let go, let go. It's like, it's genius. It's great. And then we're almost there. 11B. This then teaches you extreme balance of the right hand. So if I try to push on the bottom note when I'm out of balance, and by doing something like this, then the middle note changes. But if I try to do, if I do all with balance, then the middle note doesn't have to change, right? Does this, did this make sense? Hope it made sense. Yes, cool. Yeah, so then you just, it's teaching you extreme. Exactly where your strings are. Yeah, that you can actually control the top one, but keep the bottom one because of the balance of the arm. That's, yeah. Then if you make it all the way through this Dounis to this point, then when you hit this chord, it feels so good. Your whole body's like, yeah, I know exactly where my strings are, and my whole body is balanced and good to go. Like, give me a solid sound. I got you. Yeah, any questions on that one? No. Okay. Yes.
Just this one, again, like what would you do to break it down? Would you change bows, or is it definitely not change bows, or?
I think, yeah, so, yeah, I guess it is, it's also it's asking you to do two things, which is one, that you can't have that many notes in the bow unless you completely relax and release in balance of the bow, in order to keep the sound. Otherwise you'll run out of bow. So you can maybe save that as like a secondary task that eventually you can get to when you're comfortable then finding the balance. That I would even like visually watch what's happening. Is this in line with the string I'm on? And is this completely happy and healthy on the back of the hand here, of just completely balanced? Wherever I am, the whole contraption goes there
In one piece.
in one piece. Yeah.
There's no like dropping from one
I don't
horsepower,
think,
just one unit.
yes.
Yeah.
In my practicing of it, yeah, I haven't found a way to keep the middle voice as stable
Yeah.
when you're kicking with the small muscle. So I keep this and then tap into the bottom and upper notes.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Could you demonstrate doing it out of balance, doing it wrong?
Out of
What
I
should we-
will say I'm not sure if it's wrong. You could prove me wrong, actually, that this is it can also work this way, but just in my practicing it seems to work best when I use my arm as a complete contraption rather than right. I lose the pitch. I don't have as much control of exactly where the string lands when I'm going for it. Did that make sense? So if I mean, of course, there are places where you're gonna want to use the wrist for string crossings, and you're not always going to be using the whole arm for string crossings. But I think one of this is a place in order to stay totally balanced. I would keep the whole contraption together.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then, yay! But usually by the time I get here in my practicing, I'm like a horse to the stable. I'm like, I just want to get to my repertoire. But this has very obvious benefits that it just strengthens the hand. When you do left hand pizzicato, I would caution to not do it too much. I think this is actually a great amount that he has you do. But if you do more than that, Mr. Zuckerman, when I started doing pizzicato to try and strengthen stuff, he said, careful, watch out. I've had students that went awry. So, but with this, it's just, you pick a string, and then you repeat it a lot of times, repeating each bar twice. I would also say one thing that I've learned through doing this exercise is, again, the same thing as in the very first exercise. If my thumb is back here, there's just more tension. And so if I'm trying to pit, it's just harder. So the more I can get everything into the hand, in the strength of the hand, then I can get it, like really grab it without hurting myself. Actually, I go quite deep and pull this way rather than being out and reaching. If that makes sense. And as I go for the fourth finger, if I want more strength, I'm gonna bring the thumb up and really balance for that fourth finger. Does that all make sense? This one, the 12th exercise is just, it's just strengthening the fingers and doing your best with crazy requests like doing a fourth finger to third finger half step. There's not much you can get out of that. I'm not sure you would ever use that in repertoire, but it's good. It's good training for your muscles. And then when I'm done with this, I am ready for anything. I will say that when I have a concert, I always plan like 2 hours of practice minimum before the concert, and one of those hours is devoted to Dounis at this point. So yeah, and that's all I have to say.
Wow. So as you were building up to being able to do that within an hour, like, can you give us some sort of idea of rest stops along the way? Like, how far did you go in the very beginning, and how did you develop that in order to be able to do it within an hour?
Sure. Yeah, I think my rest stops were that even if I didn't make it all the way through the etude or the exercise, even if I did one bar of it, if I did it really with all of my actionable items accomplished, then that was good. That was okay, because then I learned something that I could build on for the next whenever. I would say even now in my hour-long practice, well, yeah, on a concert day, I will push myself to go all the way through everything. But say it's like one of my like 2 to 3 times a week, and I don't have like a rehearsal or a concert coming up, then I still sometimes won't go all the way through the exercise, depending on the amount of time that I have. Did that answer your question? I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to think of, like maybe doing a little bit of everything rather than like get to the third exercise and I'm just depleted or whatever,
Oh,
you know
absolutely.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So to try to do a bit of most of it at least.
I think so. Yeah. I when I some I find I mean we're all built differently and we're all approach our instruments a little bit differently. I know for me, if I make it through until the seventh exercise, I'm pretty much there, ready to like, okay, bring it. But if I really want to go the full way, then I'll go into all the bow stuff.
Yeah.
So that also might be a stopping point, a rest stop, like you said, that you could use.
I have a funny question.
Okay.
Really. Um, I, I was thinking about Paganini, I think he developed the left-hand pizzicato and things. Do we happen to know what kind of training he had? What was his go-to method or
Well,
his?
I heard it was the devil. And he learned from the devil. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. Actually, I would be really interested to know that. Does anyone any?
I think there was a tradition that was Gemignani, Corelli to some extent, and Tartini that was a through line. And then around that time, I think uh, Paganini was just so kind of over and above all of those that he brought on a whole bunch of extended techniques. But I think that he probably came through that tradition, um, you know, somewhat of a through line from Gemignani and Tartini.
Mhm.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Molly. I mean, for me, this was just really immensely fun because I had found out about the Dounis years ago by seeing, actually it was a post on social media where somebody said, oh, I'm coming back from maternity leave and this is how I'm gonna get back in, and it was like the front page of the Dounis, and I was like, oh, what's that? And so
Yeah.
I've been wondering, I've had so many questions and this answered a lot of them. And um, the level of experience with it, having spent a decade practicing it, is just so invaluable for us, and really appreciate your generosity in spending time with us. And I am going to come back to you about this Paganini project. That sounds
know.
so cool. Yeah. Force you to talk through some of that. That'd be really, really fun. Molly told us earlier that she's working on La Campanella and creating sort of a manual for how to approach it and on the viola. That sounds amazing. So yeah, we'll circle back.
All right.
Thank you so very much. I'm sure we all want to give her a big round of applause and
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. It was also, yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning, it was a little bit scary when Daria reached out and I was like, oh no, I have to let someone into my practice room. But it was actually it was really great for me to sit down and think through of, once again, like all of the stuff that I'm actually trying to get out of it. So thank you.
yeah, and I think there are lots and lots of violists who would be very interested in hearing this too. So we'll be excited to put it up on our site and let them reap the benefits too.
Amazing. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All
So
right.
May 2nd?
Yeah,
What's our next one?